Welcome once again to a Chef Knives to Go quick look product review. I'm Steve Gamache, and this time we have the Kohetsu VG-5 Tsuchime or hammered Nakiri 170 millimeter knife. So the way these are constructed, they've got 3 layers, and on the outside you've got a softer stainless steel cladding covering up the center hardcore cutting steel, which is VG-5 full stainless steel. I would suggest don't be afraid of VG-5. A lot of people get really wrapped up in steels, but if you're looking for something just good, especially maybe for someone that's not, a super knife aficionado, this is a very good steel. It's easy to sharpen, takes a nice edge, and it's just a pretty good all-around steel that's easy to care for. So again, don't be afraid of this steel. These knives are really nicely made and good performers. Heat treat on that's probably around the 60 range, maybe 61. The construction, as I mentioned, does have a soft stainless cladding on either side of that hard core steel, and that cladding is fairly polished, as you can tell here, and it also has a hammered or Tsuchime finish to it. We'll get a close-up of it. The weight and dimensions should be similar from knife to knife in this line, but this one's 184 grams or 6.5 ounces. Edge length is right about 165, or from the back of the heel here to where it turns the corner in the usable edge. The about 6.5 inches. The overall length about 11.5 inches. The spine thickness, this is pretty much just the same thickness all the way down to about 1.8 millimeters, all the way from the handle bolster out to the end. And height is pretty similar across, so I usually take 2 measurements on height. So we've got 47 3/4 at the back and 46.3 in the middle. So it loses a little bit of height as you get towards the end, which is pretty normal for a lot of Nakiri styles. So it's not a super tall Nakiri, but it does have pretty good clearance on the cutting board for you. The handle is just a basic black pack of wood, which is a stabilized wood product. Over time, you may see the rivets and center full tang, full stainless tang get proud or come out just a little bit. This one's pretty smooth at this point. If they get dried out, some people actually soak their handles in mineral oil with a little, Ziploc bag around it for a day or so to kind of plump it back up. So it's an option you can try. These do have a very well crafted integrated bolster that flows right into the blade, so very nicely done. The edge profile is very flat on these, and the out-of-the-box edge, I'll give it a 6 out of 10. You'll notice on a lot of this line of knives, there will be a shiny section towards the edge on the right side of the blade as you're holding it. That's basically a polish, and they're thinning out the metal towards the edge for performance. The left side of the blade on these doesn't tend to have that same kind of thinned section on it, so you'll notice a little bit different in the polish towards the edge on the right side of these than the left side. Here is our kind of our beauty shot on these. These are pretty knives. They've got a etched kanji on the right side of the blade. You can definitely see the hammering pattern on there, and then you've got a pretty generous grind that comes down to the edge. You can see the core steel kind of peeking out at the very edge there, and then you got the edge bevel on top of that. Here's the left side of the blade. So every one of these is going to be a little bit different. Fit and finish is good. They've polished the spine a little, done just a little bit of relief on the corners. They've done some polishing and relieving on the corners of the choil here, so that's comfortable. And it's a pretty stiff blade and very, very flat profile. We'll look at it on the cutting board, but this one's quite flat. Balance point on this is going to be right about there, which is not as bad as it can be for Western handled knives with a full tang. So the blade having more mass out here kind of counteracts that. So it still works nicely in a pinch grip or in a racket, traditional type grip. Let's look at the cutting board profile. So as I said, this baby is flat. It really doesn't float into anything. It's just flat. So this will take some attention on technique. The flatter these are, the more you've got to hit that thing square, because if you're doing this or this, I'm exaggerating, but if you're doing some chopping and you're getting a little more front or back, you're going to miss the middle. So you'll definitely have, if you're going to do straight chopping, you got to kind of learn to get that thing nice and perpendicular to the cutting board. It will work really nice for doing this kind of motion as well. Doesn't quite flow into a stop, but it'll do some nice cutting of this style. And it'll do tip draws too. The way that tip on there is kind of angled and a little bit of a point to it, and being so flat, this will do really nice tip draws through product as well. So it's a little more versatile than you might think at first glance. So just an interesting line of knives, well crafted, nice performance. Again, user-friendly VG-5 steel. It's just something to not overlook. This is a nice line of knives. So this is the Kohetsu VG-5 Tsuchime or hammered Nakiri 170mm knife.